Serious. What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? Grapefruits completely fuck with a shitload of prescription medications. Edit. Grapefruits. Not grapefruits. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to kill 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. I say in quat. After in quat. I mean relatively soon after, within say a day, to have an effect quite this devastating. The leaching does reduce over the month, but it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. I only recently learned that when you get sunburned, the burn isn't because of skin cell damage. The UV radiation damages the DNA. Then the skin cells decide to commit suicide and fall off so that the damaged DNA doesn't produce cancer. I'll never be mad at my skin peeling again. When doing an autopsy, they don't put the organs back where they belong, they are all stored in the belly. That you should never use bleach to clean cat pee. The combination creates chlorine gas that is very toxic. If you're exposed to rabies and start to show symptoms, your chance of survival is virtually 0%. Brain aneurysms can be completely unpredictable and can happen at any time in your life, no matter how healthy you are. A kid who I went to high school with at the age of 16 just did not wake up one morning and his cause of death was a brain aneurysm. Microplastics in the food and water supplies are crossing the blood-brain barrier. Shish. There are alternative ways some proteins can form tertiary structures. These different structures make the protein unable to function. These alternate protein structures are infectious and incurable as they are so stable. If you get some in your blood, they will slowly convert your own proteins when making contact. They're called prions. It gets worse. All of the diseases they cause are horrific progressive nightmares that aren't just incurable, but untreatable. And they're all 100% fatal. There's one that just stops you being able to sleep. It has two forms: fatal familial insomnia, where the prion is inherited, and sporadic fatal insomnia, where the prion is not inherited. You start off having difficulty sleeping, which causes mental health issues such as panic attacks and paranoia. Then you start getting hallucinations, then you completely lose the ability to sleep, then finally dementia, insanity and death. It's universally fatal and usually kills you within about 18 months, sometimes as fast as 7. There's a woman in America who has it. She and her husband were both starting out in their well-paying careers when she found out she has FFI. I think her mom died from it. But anyway, she and her husband quit their jobs and started school all over to become researchers to find a way to cure FFI before it affects her. Last I checked, a few years ago, she was still alive. Not sure how their research is going. It's really fucking scary and sad though. She got pregnant, I think with IVF, to make sure she didn't pass on the gene. Link was a lawyer with a JD from Harvard. Then got a new Harvard PhD in biomedical sciences so she could find a cure. Such an incredible story. I hope she makes it. She hasn't been diagnosed with it, but her mother died of it, and after testing they determined she was at very high risk of developing the disease herself. Isn't the inherited version found only in one Italian family? I read a book called The Family That Couldn't Sleep years ago, and my broken memory tells me they only knew of one instance of it. Great book. Read that shit. If there's one thing Reddit taught me, to be scared shitless of its fucking prions. Like cancer, except transmissible, incurable, and can survive outside of a host in nature for quite a long time if I remember. Deer spontaneously develops prion, prion multiplies and deer dies. Carcass gets eaten, spreading prion to next host. Next host dies and prion chills in the soil till the next deer eats in a mouthful. Deer gets hunted and eaten by human. Congrats? You're fucked. Prions, because calling it mad cow disease was scaring people. Edit. I have been informed that CWD, prions in deer, have only been shown to affect cervids. The rest still stands a fake. Prions can be spontaneous or transferred from contaminated food, and there are prions that can be transferred from animals to humans, leading to fatality. Heart muscle cells don't reproduce much in adults, roughly 1% per year. If you have an infarction or other stressor that kills those cells, then your heart won't be able to grow new cells to replace the dead ones. This is why patients with diseases like heart failure end up needing a heart transplant. Trying to get this process to happen is a major goal for many cardiac researchers. Edit. Thank you all for making this such an engaging and interesting discussion. I've been studying heart cells for 10+ years now, basic scientist, no clinical training, and it's so refreshing to read many diverse perspectives and on-point questions. The universe's Higgs field might be metastable, and quat, false vacuum and quat winking face, and decay at any moment, destroying everything. Before the vaccine, the number of people who have had HPV infection, and have had at least one sexual partner, was 85% in females and 91% of males. By far the most common STI. During WW2 the Japanese would continuously experiment on the people they captured, like open a pregnant woman's stomach and see the baby, infect her with syphilis and see the effects etc. While the Nazis also did commit genocide and all that. Japan was never confronted about those war crimes. I live in the Philippines, a country who suffered terribly under Japanese occupation. Aside from the war being taught through primary to high schools, almost every other family has grandparents who can vividly recall the brutality of the Japanese occupation. From hiding your babies in forests to trunks to dug up holes, because the babies get stabbed once heard crying, to rapes and comfort women. Every other family would have a Japanese blood in them, and we know this is the reason, to bombings and mass shootings. Some elders would tell these tales on how they hid from this, to psychological traumas we still see until today. Even with some of my older relatives the PTSD still exhibits. The trauma runs deep. It's never forgotten here in the Philippines. Anthrax spores can remain viable for decades in the soil or animal products such as dried or processed hides and wool. Limnic eruptions. There are pockets of CO2 trapped under lakes all around the world that can be released at any time, creating an invisible tidal wave that kills everything in its path. Since it's heavier than air, you will just suddenly start choking and die. Update. By popular demand, the WHO research paper on requirements for safe drinking water and formaldehyde in drinking water. A lot of people in rural towns with an elevated cemetery around. This happens in Ireland a lot. There is formaldehyde leaking into the drinking water. But it won't kill you, but the thought of drinking dead people juice is probably equally bad. Sorry not sorry. Update. I have a PDF link to the scientific research paper from WHO concerning the requirements for safe drinking water, and it covers the entire formaldehyde in drinking water issue, if anyone is interested. I read it and I can confirm it's true, but not detrimental to your health, even long-term thumbs up light skin tone. Scientists don't know exactly how acetaminophen works to relieve pain and reduce fever. They have an idea but nothing for sure. But yet it's the most commonly used pain reliever in the world. The plague is still out there. The bubonic plague is endemic in many parts of the world. But cases are very rare because we've got it pretty well handled. If there's a general breakdown in society like a nuclear war, supervolcano eruption or asteroid impact, it's out there waiting to come back. DuPont knowingly infected over 90% of the American population with PFOAs, a harmful plastic that has a half-life of 20 years. Lawsuit is still ongoing but no one seems to be bothered. Edit. This link will talk about the different trials and settlements that DuPont and companies alike have faced. Also talks about what a PFOA and its dangerous effects. Another Carrington event. The original Carrington event was in 1859, which was basically an intense geomagnetic storm that knocked out telegrams because that's all the technology there was to disrupt back then. Nowadays we use electricity for virtually everything. If it hit now the effect would be like an EMP, but globally. There'd be no functional technology that involved electrics. In essence, losing all electrics would in turn stop communications, then logistics and then fundamental infrastructure like food distribution, healthcare and utilities, other than electricity. Microplastics revealed in the placentas of unborn babies. Also, Our fruits and veggies are soaking up microplastics through their roots. Brain damage and behavioral disorders in fish induced by plastic nanoparticles delivered through the food chain. Mouse study shows microplastics infiltrate blood-brain barrier. Immunology. A dive into plastic toxicity and our immune system.